All right, everyone, link to a tweet in the description. It's very, very dystopian, and the fact that people don't find this objectionable, the fact that there are a bunch of people that say, oh, well, this is wonderful and stuff like that, is actually slightly frightening. Now, thankfully, I don't think that people like AOC have quite as much support on this issue as sometimes they think, but it is an echo chamber. It's fun to pierce it once in a while and, at the very least, look upon it and howl with mockery. AOC coming out saying, oh, leave a comment below if you've seen like a corporation take a stand against, basically wrongthink, bad speech, hateful conduct, and things like that. And the sleeping giants, of course, those gadflies weigh in and say, well, no, the Silicon Valley firms don't want to take a stand. Basically, they're pissed off. These groups exist solely to try to deplatform people they don't like on behalf of their corporate billionaire masters. And so when those corporations decide not to completely commit suicide by kicking off everyone who ever told a bad joke, which is most of their users, they get really pissed off because they want to sanitize the internet for ideological reasons. The thing is, though, it's like the people that do this, the people who will actually sit there for hours sending off spam emails, basically, is what they amount to some corporate headquarters complaining about another user, the kind of people who sit there and mass flag YouTube videos or tweets and stuff like that, they think that they're fighting fascism. What they're really doing is fighting for fascism. They don't even realize it because of the corporate branding strategy that's been employed by these companies. These companies have convinced them that billionaires censoring the information that they themselves have access to, throttling argument, throttling debate in the name of think of our children, which is the same bullshit they fed us the Patriot Act with. They've come to the conclusion that that's somehow not actually corporate censorship at all. It's just being family friendly. They've been convinced that, number one, it's necessary, which I assure you it is not. There's the amount of actual extremism and violence that's spawned from the online world is extremely low. I would think it's an overall reduction because people like me can step in and debate people who are actually on that fully extreme end. But again, that's just a theory that I happen to agree with. It's not actually, the number one, they think it's necessary. They're wrong. Number two, they think it's ethically coherent. I would disagree with that. I think that the idea of some rich dude in a corporate boardroom deciding whether I can make YouTube videos or not based on my political views is a little bit odd. But again, I guess I disagree with these anti-fascists. They're fighting corporate fascism by being corporate pawns or something like that. Number three, they have a feeling that this is the funniest part because this doesn't involve the further left. This involves the center leftists that join along with them for children reasons. They're like, well, companies can do whatever they want. They're private platforms. Not entirely true if you actually look at existing law, but they've been gulled into believing it. It's interesting how many people are convinced that total lies are actually truth because they've been repeated often enough. But it's funny to see AOC. Now, here's a sitting politician. Now, in part, and this is more presidential than it is legislative, one part of government is to preserve the Constitution, to preserve freedom, to preserve the safety of our union, and freedom, promulgates safety. I don't think that it's an either-or situation. I don't think it's, well, you can have safety or liberty, but you can't have... I don't really believe in that. I think that the society is naturally safer if it's more free. Because if we look at the dictators throughout time, when would-be dictators get, shot in the head or something, because the population is well-armed, well-informed, and communicates with one another, it tends to prevent a lot more tragedy down the road. If only Venezuelans hadn't lost their right to bear arms. If only Venezuelans had been allowed to speak and protest and petition, maybe then their economy would be better right now. Maybe it'd be a better world. Whether it's a right or a left-wing movement that's seeking authoritarian power, it should be resisted. It kind of becomes difficult when the same people that are contributing hefty amounts to the Senate and to the Congress all the time, like the bankers that work with Silicon Valley or Silicon Valley itself, when they have control over all human communication. It's also interesting how AOC chooses this particular time to make this tweet. Considering the fact that Google and Facebook right now are under investigation by the DOJ for antitrust violations. I think Amazon too at this point. Again, I'm just weighing in here. I wouldn't probe them for trust violations. I don't care how much fucking money they make or how non-competitive they are, technically speaking, as long as they're not abusing other groups and users in the direct sense. As far as them having too much of a market share or something, I don't care. I just don't want them to be able to suppress competitors by asking PayPal or something to deplatform people. The internet works best when as many firms as possible take as much of a hands-off approach as they can. They should all be labeled platforms and they should act as such. Make as much money as you want, but let people make their content. Let people express their views. At least if they're in the United States, I mean, you have to maybe compromise because Europe is run by tyrants, or Australia certainly, if the news today is any indicator with their federal police, they're raiding some journo's house for reporting on how the government was spying on everyone. That's interesting. Another news story of the day, Twitter accidentally, total accident, it was just a prank, bro, banning a bunch of people for being critical of China in the Tiananmen Square sense. Now that's really amazing how they were labeled as bots and mass banned before being restored and apologized to by Twitter. Yeah, it was totally coincidental that it was on the anniversary itself. Yeah, it totally wasn't to appease China by sort of preventing that from trending too much to get egg on the Chinese government's fucking communist face. Very interesting. Anytime that the same basic premise, like the social credit score bullshit, how is that any different from what AOC and people like her want over here? You know, they just want it semi-privatized, and I say semi because these aren't private firms anymore. They're monopolies that are government co-opted and provide government services. That's why when people say like, well, if you get banned on Twitter, if you don't like it, just use Gab. Okay, Gab's a great platform, but it doesn't have USGS alerts. That's a government service being provided directly through Twitter. Government co-opted. It's a fucking public platform. Case fucking closed. They platform politicians. They platform government services and stuff. You can contact these people. Fucking DM these pages on Twitter. You can contact them through Facebook half the time. Department of Agriculture, Department of Labor, Department of Peacocks, Department of Fuckwads. You can contact all of these moron bureaucrats on Twitter and Facebook and through Google services and stuff. You can't do it on Minds. You can't do it on BitChute. There's no USGS BitChute page, although that would be interesting. Get your Quake alerts sent directly to your phone through the new BitChute app that'll never exist because of corporate monopolies. Therein lies the problem. There's my problem with it. So when AOC is saying, oh, corporations that are acting responsibly, we just celebrate them. No, they're not acting responsibly. You're being irresponsible by promoting the concept that the First Amendment somehow doesn't apply to government co-opted, non-private firms that provide government services. And she's supposedly like this genius or something like that. In reality, it's like, you know, fuck off. You're completely wrong and horrible. Despicable person. That's about all. Peace out.